I want to welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. So if you could stand and that way we can do the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag, and Mr. Lesher can do the prayer, please.
O Lord, you are the giver of life and breath. Make us ever mindful of those who suffer from depression and debilitating stress. Make us as beacons of hope for them, that we might support them and comfort them. Keep us all in your loving care, and guide us here in Talbot County to provide the support systems that will save lives. Guide us too in all the proceedings now before us, that we may govern your people with justice and equity. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Lesher. Okay, let's get started tonight on the agenda. The council has the September 27th before us. Is there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, the chair moves that the agenda be accepted as unanimous consent. Okay, next on the agenda is the minutes from September 13th. Council has had a chance to review the minutes from the 13th. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the chair moves that the minutes be accepted as unanimous consent. Next on the agenda is the disbursements of September 20th and the 27th. Council's had a chance to review the disbursements. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the disbursements? Okay. Hearing none, the chair moves that the disbursements be accepted as unanimous consent. Okay, next on the agenda, we got a proclamation of Suicide Prevention Month. Madam Secretary, could you read that proclamation into the record, please?
Proclamation, no matter what, you matter, Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas in the United States, one person dies by suicide every 11 minutes, and suicide is the 12th leading cause of death overall. In Maryland, suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for 10 to 34-year-olds and the 4th leading cause of death for 35 to 44-year-olds. And even though most of these deaths are preventable, on average, one Marylander dies by suicide every 13 hours, with more Marylanders dying by suicide than by homicide every year. And whereas 45,979 people in the United States, including 585 people in Maryland, died by suicide in 2020, as reported by the Centers for Disease Control. Suicide affects us all, with each death by suicide affecting an average of 115 people. And whereas the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, conducted by local school systems in conjunction with the Centers for Disease Control, revealed that at least 1 in 5 mid-shore teenagers ages 14 to 18 had seriously considered attempting suicide in the 12 months prior to the survey, with 25% reporting symptoms of depression, and rates of attempted suicide amongst mid-shore teens have risen 41% over the past decade. And whereas, according to the Centers for Disease Control's Adolescent Behaviors and Experiences Survey, 37% of students at both public and private high schools reported their mental health as not good most or all of the time during the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas a report by Brown University stated that 4 times as many adults reported experiencing depressive symptoms than before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and a scientific brief released by the World Health Organization in 2022 reported that the global prevalence of anxiety and depression, the leading precursors to suicide, increased by 25% in the first year of the pandemic. And whereas, because many individuals who experience mental health symptoms, suicidal thoughts and behaviors, or who die by suicide, never receive effective behavioral health services for many reasons, including the difficulty of assessing the services of healthcare providers professionally trained to reduce suicide risk, the stigma of seeking behavioral health treatment, and the stigma associated with losing a loved one to suicide. All Talbot County residents are urged to support the development of accessible behavioral health services for all citizens of our county in an effort to reduce the risk of suicide and mental health challenges for people of all ages and backgrounds, and recognize that suicide is a significant public health risk, and declare suicide prevention and mental health support a priority. Now therefore, we, the County Council of Talbot County, do hereby declare the month of October as No Matter What, You Matter, Suicide Prevention Month, and urge all citizens to actively work toward the prevention of suicide and to reach out to one another and ask, "Are you okay?" Listen without judgment and share vital resources to promote an inclusive and mentally healthy community. Given under our hands in the Great Seal of Talbot County this 27th day of September in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I appreciate that. Is there a motion and second to approve the proclamation as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second. Madam Secretary, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Thank you. Beth Ann, would you like to come up? Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, and thank
Good
you
evening.
for having us. I have with me
Sure.
tonight our Director of Practice Operations, George King, and just
Mr.
wanted
King?
to say
Welcome.
thank you to the council, and thank you to you for all of your support. I think, you know, the proclamation and the statistics that were read speak for themselves. As the CEO of For All Seasons, we are continuing to serve as the region's Behavioral Health and Rape Crisis Center, and we're continuing to see the effects not only of the mental health crisis that has yet to come to full fruition after COVID, but we're continuing to see our students struggle, our adults struggle, our economy struggle, the folks who are working in our business community struggle. And as you heard in the proclamation, suicide is the third leading cause of death in the state of Maryland for ages 10 to 34. And it's a staggering statistic, and it's a true statistic. And so I think sometimes we hear these numbers and we don't allow them to sit in. And I know for some of us on the council, we have children around that age. Some of us have children that are older. It's an important topic that we don't always get an opportunity to talk about. This year, our No Matter What You Matter campaign is focusing in on life is better with you here. And it was so wonderful to park my car at the corner and see that our banner is up on the street already. And the banner simply says, "You never know what someone is going through, reach out." And what we're asking the community to do this October and continuing on throughout the entire year is to be a part of healthy conversations and checking in on one another. So when we say ask, listen, share, the campaign that we put in place 3 years ago, what we're really saying to people is ask folks, how are you doing? Many times we ask that question to the people in our community, to our family members, to people at work, and we are so busy going to the next Zoom call or going to the water cooler or picking our kids up from school that we don't always do a great job of checking in to really listen to that answer. And once we hear what's happening for someone, we're asking that the community share resources. You don't have to have all the answers if someone says they're not doing okay. That's where For All Seasons and the other mental health agencies in the community come in. And so we're grateful that you have once again given space in the month of October to No Matter What You Matter, because that's really what it's all about. We want people to understand that mental health resources are available. We continue to serve in the community regardless of anyone's ability to pay. We take private insurance, people with no insurance, people who are in between insurance, and the agency works with Midshore Behavioral Health and our other community partners to make sure that we have crisis appointments available, that there are people through our 24-hour crisis hotline, that when someone needs an immediate person on that other end of the phone, there is someone there. And I also wanted to give George an opportunity to just share with you, sort of from the perspective of somebody who works at the agency and lives in our community, how this impacts him as well.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Thank
evening.
you for having us here. I just would like to repeat what Beth Ann said. When you look at someone, don't make an assumption that everything is okay, that they're doing well. you never know what someone's going through, and it's always important to ask someone how they're doing, to listen to what they say, and to be a good friend, to be a good neighbor, to show that you care, to be decent. And again, if you can direct someone for resources and let them know that it's okay, there's no stigma attached to it.
Mhm.
So thank you all so much for having us here. We appreciate it.
Right.
And I do want to let the council and the community know that on Wednesday night, October 5th, we will be we do a quarterly speaker series with the Avalon Theater, and our speaker series for the fall is called Life is Better with You Here, a community conversation about suicide prevention. It will be myself, along with our Chief Clinical Officer, Lisa Lee, with moderator Bruce Grove, who works for Queen Anne's County Television. And so we're inviting folks to come out to the Avalon. We will also live stream the presentation through Facebook, so if you're not able to be there in person. We're going to be talking about practical strategies for reaching out to those who are struggling. We're going to discuss some crisis resources that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we'll share a message of support and hope for those who may be struggling. Because we know that even as we're sitting in this room, somebody might be listening and be in a space of saying, they're talking about me, I'm the one struggling. And so the opportunity to really open up a community conversation of how we all play a role in suicide prevention will take place on Wednesday night, October 5th, and that starts at 5:30. There's a cocktail hour, and then the actual presentation begins at 7 p.m.
Okay, that's great, great. Oh, Mr. Pack?
Yes,
Yep.
Dan, thanks for all that you're doing here in the county and keeping this to the forefront. Mr. King, a pleasure meeting you for the first time. It is King, is it?
Correct.
Mr.
Thank
King. Beth Ann, you also sit on the county's mental health task force and working along with Nancy Andrews and Rob Smith from the school. How is the No Matter What You Matter Suicide Prevention Month integrated into our school system?
So we spend a lot of time, we have clinicians in the Talbot County School, and we also work with the school. We offer all of our resources. We do things like sponsoring the water bottles and making sure that there's a message for the kids that see that. We offer to go in and do programs within the schools. We are available to all of the classrooms. Last year, we worked with the music department and did a special program for the music students. And so any way that we can be integrated into the school where we are allowed to come in and present the project that we are doing and or open up the conversation. We also offer the groups at our office for our Latina women, and so our teens are able to come to the office and have real peer-to-peer support conversations around mental health and mental wellness on a weekly and monthly basis.
Okay. Thank you.
Have you seen, and one more question,
yep.
have you seen since COVID the rate of self-harm amongst this age group increase or decrease?
Increase.
Increase.
Absolutely. I mean, what we are hearing from young folks and even our high schoolers and our college students and into the adult population, there's more anxiety, there's more depression, there is more overwhelmed feelings. And so what I've continued to say in our community is, 10 years ago when I started doing this work and I came to all of you, we talked about mental health diagnosis. What we're really talking about now is mental health symptoms. Because even if you are not someone who has a mental health diagnosis, we've all experienced mental health symptoms since the start of COVID in a different way. And so when anxiety is higher and kids are having a more difficult time transitioning back to school, when there's an overwhelming feeling, if mom and dad aren't doing well, or if the caregiver is not doing well and the child is not doing well, and there aren't enough resources in the community. Through this task force that we've been serving on, it's very clear we are at a workforce shortage for mental health therapists, and no matter how many therapists we hire, I could hire 10 more therapists tomorrow, it still would not meet the need. And so it's really about trying to figure out how to serve the community in a larger capacity with a scaled down workforce. And that is really the crisis that's in front of us right now, is that there are simply not enough mental health therapists to meet the need because we are continuing to see those numbers rise.
I think Ms. Morrison, the county manager's office, will be reaching out to that task force
Yeah.
to report out before this body expires. So hopefully we'll be hearing from you. If
We
not,
have a couple meetings that are set up
Okay.
just for that purpose.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Ms. Price?
I think when you see the statistic about the youth and in correlation to COVID and keeping them out of school and what we put them through, it's frustrating. COVID was real, but that was the only thing that people talked about. And they didn't talk about what was going to happen, you know, with mental health, with putting their children through it, and there was no balance to the whole time. And so while it's very sad, very, very sad to see these, I'm not surprised. We should have, you know, started thinking about this a lot sooner, because I think it's going to take years and years and maybe a whole, you know, generation or so to come out of this after what so many people have been put through, not just the children, but what we've all been put through. It's really unfortunate. It's just no words for it. I think we all knew that this was coming. You know, suicide is a horrible thing. I've had, you know, a close friend who was this close, someone very close in my life that I saw that happen to. That had nothing to do with the pandemic, but it's just exacerbated it. And we've got to figure out how to have people recover.
Well,
It's
and I
gonna take
think,
longer.
you know, to your point, the volume of how it affects people, every single person in this room can say that we are directly or indirectly affected by mental illness. Whether it's a friend, a family member, whether it's ourselves, it's a child, it's someone in your child's classroom, no one is absent of being affected. And so the important piece is when we look where we were and where we are, the mental health crisis has yet to really fully explode. I can tell you that right now. I mean, we are just starting to see the true effects of what has transpired. And there was a problem before COVID. You know, we talk about it in COVID terms now because that's the here and now. But these are the conversations that weren't had openly for a long time. You know, I don't know about all of you, but myself, George, we were raised in a generation where you just didn't talk about it. And so the fact that we're having conversations, the fact that you all are making, once again, for the 5th year in a row, October No Matter What You Matter month, this is what we need to be able to work towards solving the issue. Because it comes from the conversation and the safety that it's okay to have the conversation so that our children start to say, hey, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, I'm not doing okay.
Right.
Right. And what you said about, you know, what you don't know what someone else is going through. And people are so unkind these days, and they're not stopping to think about maybe someone's acting a certain way because of something personal that they're going through. And I think that just a lot more kindness in this world towards other people would also go a long way.
You know, Laura, I have a t-shirt that it says humankind on it, be both. And it's my favorite t-shirt because it really is, you know, there's a kindness and there's some perspective taking that we could all engage in a more diligent way to think that maybe that child who's having a difficult time in a classroom, maybe it's not just that they're trying to be a pain in the butt in the class, maybe there's something more going on. The person who we interact with in the grocery store who might not be doing well and responds and takes it out on someone else, there's usually something underlying between that. And so simply just taking the onus on ourselves to be the one kind person in that person's day can make all of the difference.
You're so right. Thank you.
Yep. Mr. DeVillio? Yep.
So my best friend took his life at 23. He was outside of the 14 to 18 that we look at. And I know Mr. Callahan had a good friend who took his life older in successful business, and it happens at any age. There's 40,000 people in Talbot County, and at the end of the day, it's a small town. We all know each other in this room. We start recognizing somebody in your organization or club or what have you that kind of drops out, or somebody online who just starts behaving very differently than they were before. Just reach out. Greg Harris, Officer Harris in here, I can't tell you how many times he's seen me up here having incredibly difficult meetings, and the following day just calls and says, hey, man to man, you all right? Just want to check on you. You know, just do that, person to person. If you see somebody, you know, reach out. You'll recognize it and they'll appreciate it, and then the cycle just continues that way. So don't ever think that, you know, a quick phone call, a quick text, quick email to somebody who's just acting differently than normal won't be important. Take the time to do it.
Thank you, Mr. DeVillio. Mr. Lesher?
Thank you for all you're doing. I remember quite vividly the program that you did last year in the Avalon's Stoltz Pavilion on this, and all that you're doing to remove the stigma, which is a powerful and appropriate thing to do. It's a great campaign, and thank you for your good work on this.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to follow up with my colleagues too. You did a phenomenal job last year in that pavilion.
Thank you.
You really did.
Thank
You knocked it out of the park. And Mr. King, I appreciate you jumping in there and being with us, and it's great to meet you. And just like Mr. DeVillio said, you know, I've experienced it firsthand. And I believe everybody's experienced something. And I think you just need to really look at your surroundings, look at your friends. If there is something strange happening, you know, I wish I would have approached my friend a little bit more in a different way, looking back at it. But your thought process would never sort of go that somebody's going to commit suicide, a friend. So, but it does hit, it hits home. It makes me even upset, and just even thinking about being able, I don't know the words, Beth Ann, you got the great words for it, but you know, to try to help somebody, you just want to try to help them, and you almost can't sometimes, you know, and I think the embarrassment, the hurting so bad inside, you wish you could help them. But I think the big thing that I think we're all trying to say is there's help there. You know, that the suicide thing shouldn't really enter your mind, because there's a lot to live for. That's for sure. And I hope people listen to this tonight and realize that there is help. And we're all, like Mr. DeVillio, we're a close-knit community. So there's sources. It's not worth it. You know, we all have bad times, but please don't do that, you know, because a lot of people love you. So I appreciate everything you're doing.
You know, if I could leave everybody
Yes.
with one thing, I would
Yes.
take what Mr. DeVillio said, and I would take it one step further, and I would invite everyone tonight to reach out to someone.
Correct.
Send a text,
Yep.
place a phone call, send an email. It's important for us to all remember that we are hardwired, we are neurologically hardwired for connection.
Yep.
And when someone feels connected, that's when people can feel hope.
Right.
And feel like there is a community, or even just one person surrounding them. So
Right.
I hope everyone takes an opportunity tonight to
Yep.
simply shoot a text that just says, hey, thinking about
Yep.
you.
Yep.
And hopefully that will spur them to send a text to someone else. But those
Exactly.
small little moments that
Yep.
we forget to take are important.
Well, thanks a lot. And if you don't mind coming up, we're going to give you a proclamation here. Well deserved. Let's all stand up. Yep. Okay, well, that was
Mr.
great.
Callahan, if I
Yeah,
may,
yeah,
can I
yeah,
leave
sure.
these postcards
Absolutely.
for you all?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that'd be great. Okay, the next thing is a presentation of the Senior Care Plan FY23. If Kate could come on up, that would be great. And I think, yeah, Dr. Maguire, be great.
Thank you for your time this
Yeah,
evening.
sure.
For letting
Nice
us
seeing you guys.
come again from the Health Department, and I just have a really brief talking point PowerPoint
Okay.
for tonight to discuss the Talbot County Senior Care Program Partnership for fiscal year '23. We usually come every year, and we do come every year and present the program, how we're using the funds, who we're serving. And I just want to briefly just give an overview of the program, who we're serving, and then and where we're headed kind of moving forward. So again, it's a partnership. It is a Maryland Department of Aging program. The funding comes from.
Okay, can you get that screen?
What do I need to do?
If you go to slideshow, Kate, yeah, and you go from beginning all the way to the left.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. It takes a team. It is a partnership. So, so again, it's a Department of Aging program. The grant funds come from Department of Aging from state general funds. Thank you. So next slide, there we go. Just for the senior care program, the scope of what it's intended for, it is a statewide grant for the state of Maryland. Every county gets a distribution from this. It allows for a really high degree of flexibility in every county to administer how they see fit, and it is a partnership between the public agencies as far as the health department, Department of Social Services, their area agency on aging, and the county government. So those are the main entities that meets and discuss the best way to administer the program to meet the needs in that county. It does provide services and funds for people 65 and older who may be at risk of nursing home placement. The main aim of the program is to help seniors remain safely in the community for as long as possible. There's 4 core services that are provided in this program. Part of it is this initial screening for eligibility and for available supportive programs. Then there is a comprehensive assessment of needs. So the assessment, we work with the individual and the family to determine what their particular needs are and how we can help fulfill them. A case manager, which to me is a huge key to this program. There's a case manager assigned to the senior, the individual and their family to help secure and coordinate services. It's not just we meet with you, we have a plan, and we move on. We actually stay linked with the individual as long as they need us. And then there's a pool of what we call gap-filling funds to purchase services for those that are enrolled and meet the program eligibility. Okay. For eligibility, and this is statewide eligibility, not just Talbot County. So they'd be residents of our county, age 65 and older. Based on the assessment, it's determined whether they have a moderate or severe functional disability. We really look at not just medical diagnosis. Someone could have a severe medical diagnosis, but they're highly functioning. Other people have more difficulty functioning as far as their activities of daily living, able to get their needs met, grocery shop, do their own bathing, pay for their own medicines, that sort of thing. And then there's a financial eligibility, and it's listed here. I won't go over it in too much detail, but it's basically 300% of poverty level is the eligibility for this program. So in Talbot County was part of a pilot program early in the 1980s when actually there actually became a Department of Aging, and it became a cabinet position back in the early 80s. So we were a pilot. We got some of money to implement this, and it was awarded to the health department at that point in time. So it's been administered out of the health department in Talbot since 1982. Again, it's a formal partnership between Upper Shore Aging for Us, Department of Social Services, and our county government. And we're really one of the only 2 counties where the health department actually administers this program primarily. Allegheny is the other county where that occurs. And what we do is we merge it with a program that's known as the AIRS program, and every health department has one in Maryland. And really it's a Medicaid program, but that's the program that provides the actual assessment of the individual and develops the care plan. It's very comprehensive, and it's also used to determine levels of care for Medicaid reimbursement, nursing home care, that sort of thing. But it's the nurses from the AIRS program that go out, initially meet with the individual, work on an assessment and a care plan with them, and they're sort of the driving force for getting that particular senior served. The advantages of administering a program like the social worker that serves as the case manager for that particular client, which gives them a skilled individual to help them navigate medical systems, help them discuss issues with their doctors if they need be, and also work at the other social needs and other needs that family might, and that senior might have. Another positive thing being in the health department is that we can start services and enrollment right on that day. We will go out and do the assessment, we'll meet with the senior, and if they're interested and eligible for the senior care program, we can get them enrolled, which is a minimal amount of paperwork, and actually start services sometimes that day or that week for them. In other jurisdictions, a lot of times the senior care individual that's interested would get referred to one entity to do the assessment, and then back to another entity to follow them and do the case management. And for us, we're sort of a one-stop shop for that sort of thing. So it works well. Again, the AIRS nurses provide oversight for the care that's provided in the home. And we're able to monitor both health functional status, provide feedback, and make recommendations to medical providers. So that's kind of unique for counties like ours where you have nurses directly involved in the senior care program. And this is just a slide of where we are in fiscal year 23. We have a total allocation for this year of $185,000. The grant from the Department of Aging is $120,000 this year, and the county contribution is $65,000, which is an incredible 50% plus match, which again is unique to get that much support for this program. Briefly, we try to keep, and we do, minimal amount of administration, 30% for staff case management, and close to 65% of funds directly for clients. So the Department of Aging budget this year is almost $10 million for the whole state for this program. It went up 16%. Unfortunately, the upper shore aging counties only got 4% of that. And we've discussed some strategies. They're looking at the percent of seniors in poverty compared to the state average, and not really looking at some of the rural issues that we wish they would look at when they were allocating these funds.
Absolutely.
So that's something to work on moving forward. So this is just an overview of the money we've spent and the average amount of the total project spent per client. Our high was in fiscal year 21, which is, during COVID, we served 221. We actually spent less money that year. We had a lot of help from this community as far as additional funds for services, for supplies. And we really relied, we had people send us their stimulus checks and ask us to use that for seniors in the community. It was really a phenomenal year, and that's why that number's kind of deflated for that particular year, just because we had so much additional support that wasn't added in. But this is generally what we spent. So we're looking forward to having that additional funds definitely this year for a variety of reasons. Increased need and increased costs of goods and services both will help out a lot. We mentioned gap filling funds, and really for those in this program, a lot of folks are just above the income guidelines to get formal supports and formal assistance. So we fill in the gaps using these funds to help them, because part of our role is, and it says here, they're used as a last resort to purchase services when other resources are unavailable. So the first thing we do when we meet with a client and family, a senior and their family, is say, what's the big picture? What can we connect you to that might be an ongoing formal entitlement type of resource that will help you either get services or help you with some additional dollars so you can purchase services. So once we do that, if there's no other means, we use the gap filling funds. And this is just, we allocate it based on the needs of the individual. So these are just a breakdown of what services are provided with these gap filling funds. So we use about 30% for chore services and some transportation needs, 21% emergency response systems, especially in rural areas. It gives families and our individuals who live alone a lifeline. It's very important, I think, to have that safety and its peace of mind for the families. 18% for personal care services, 14% for medication copays, and 13% for medical supplies. And the average grant money for the gap filling funds we distribute run from about $10 up to close to $500 per month per individual. We only average really about $65 per client per month for a fiscal year, which isn't much. in the big picture. All enrolled seniors receive case management services. We don't put anybody on a waiting list. That's also unique for our county. In other jurisdictions, sometimes they have to create waiting lists to enroll folks in this program. We don't do this here. We might not be able to fully fund all their needs, but we're able to provide that case management, and that's because of the design and the involvement of the air staff. We will help people navigate through the systems. Who do we serve in Talbot? And that's just a breakdown. 68% female, 43% Black or African American, 51% 80 or older. So we're serving some older folks. 64% live alone. It's a fairly high percent. 43% of Medicare only. And then if you look at the incomes, you know, who we serve are really on the lower end of the income scale. Of that 300% of poverty level, most of our focus is on people that are making probably 150% of poverty level or less. So, you know, that's not much of an income to live on and still have to pay medicine co-pays, medical expenses, and everything else that goes along with it. So that's pretty interesting. And just to finish up, this program really has evolved to become a true community partnership. We have so many people that help out with this program, organizations, public and private, contractors that we go to that will know we're working with a client, might be low income, and they'll give us a better deal on work that needs to be done. Local pharmacies that will let maybe co-pays ride till we can come up with a way to help someone pay for their medicine. And I've just listed a few on here. And really, I know the county is very familiar with a lot of these groups because, you know, you support them in a myriad of ways. Meals on Wheels, senior centers and community centers for socialization, mobile integrated health and emergency services. Public transportation has recently expanded in Talbot with some door-to-door service, and this has helped our clients immensely, our seniors. And it's a whole county-wide effort. And then I just listed some churches, agencies, Bay 100 community volunteers. We can call on them when we have somebody discharged from the hospital. They might need a wheelchair ramp. They can sometimes get out within a few weeks and get one put up for them, and that's just amazing. And I know, again, these agencies are well known to the county. And so when they're supported, the whole network is supported. And then just moving forward, the challenges ahead. Everybody knows that the population is aging, the percent of older adults. The Department of Aging State Plan data really reflects an increase of almost 15% just here in Talbot County within the next 10 years for those 60 and older. Also, the increasing cost of filling basic needs, goods and services. And just like Beth Ann was talking, we have an increasing need for caregivers to take care of folks, as well as family caregivers that are relied on often. They're often considered informal caregivers, but really they become formal caregivers and are often unpaid. So when they do that, they're not working, and it causes a whole nother array of problems. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And what we do, if you look at the nursing home costs, sometimes the only option for folks that can't maintain in the community would be go to a nursing home and have Medicaid pay. And Medicaid costs are roughly $262 a day, between $85,000 to $100,000 a year. And so every little bit we can do with this program, with the few dollars that we have to either keep people at home, even if we keeping them home an extra month, it's generally better quality of life for them, and it just helps decrease costs in the big picture. So, and again, with Beth Ann's presentation really made me think too, a lot of our folks are isolated. A lot of our seniors are isolated. I know the focus a lot of times is on kids for depression. We do depression screenings. We have programs that provide in-home socialization, and our case managers are the link for the folks that we serve. We get phone calls all week long from seniors that might ask, well, I got a piece of mail and I don't understand what I got. It has to do with my insurance. I mean, these are the types of things that they can connect to us, and we can help them with. So real proud of the program and the staff effort. Just a real quick statistic is, of all the counties in the state that get senior care, there were 7 in fiscal year 21 that served 200 or more clients. We served over 200 the last several years. And of the 7, 5 of them were the big counties, you know, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, PG, Anne Arundel, Montgomery. They all get over $1 million for senior care. We get 120, Allegheny, and the 2 counties that served over 200 besides those big 5 were us and Allegheny, and they're the 2 counties that have the health department model. So I think that's pretty telling about the design. We're proud of it. We're proud of the support we've gotten over the years. And part of the presentation is just asking the county council's approval to continue to administer the program from Talbot County Health Department.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. Dr. Maguire. Mr. Pack?
Yes, Kate, again, thank you for a wonderful presentation. And I would say during my tenure here on this council, this program has probably been one of the programs that has always received unanimous support from the various councils that I've set upon. And I know the former USA CEO, and I know the current USA CEO is going to be loudly speaking out against the disparities when it comes to those state senior funds coming into Talbot County and into the shore areas. And as you just said, when we're serving the same numbers, if not even more, clients as the other larger counties, you would think that those funds would be distributed more fairly than they have been in the past. So hopefully that's something that the current USA executive team could get on and support. I know we've heard it from Ms. Brooks here, also at the Senior Center, regarding the disparity of those funds when it comes out to Talbot County and Carolina and Dorchester. So we need to all get on with him and with them to support equal share of those dollars. You said that Talbot and Allegheny are the only 2 counties that are using the health department model, which I think is a better model to use myself, the one-stop shopping, rather than have people move about various agencies. Do you know how those other counties are on the shore primarily? I would ask, how are they handling these funds?
They are handled, some of them are directly administered from the Area Agency on Aging, and others through the Department of Social Services. Dorchester is a Department of Social Services model. I think Queen Anne's is from their Area Agency on Aging, and then you have the MAC Center, which is kind of a mix.
The Lower Shore.
They're sort of a different model where they sort of merge programs and combine, so they kind of run it out of the MAC Center, which has some input from Social Services, Health Department, and the Area Agency on Aging. But statewide, most of them are run from the Area Agency on Aging, which does a fantastic job, but they don't have that medical piece,
Right.
that clinician piece of having the nurses and social workers
Which is
available.
important.
I think it is,
Yeah.
because I think our program in Alleghenies, and even the MACs to some extent, really look at the big picture. You can't just look at medical, you just can't look at social, you have to look at the person and their situation as a whole. You can't do diabetic education if someone's getting ready to have their house foreclosed on. They can't pay their medicine co-pays and pay for their, utility bill. They're not gonna sit and listen to medical education about their condition. So we have a team, and we break down the tasks, and we can help them with hopefully everything that they need to some extent, so we can move them forward to be as healthy and safe as they can at home. So yes, we do have, I think it's a better model, obviously, to have that combination and have those clinicians involved.
Well, I want to thank you all for being the lead agency on this program for a number of years now, working with Ms. Brooks and her team over at the Senior Center, and also with Linda Webb and her team over at DSS. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Ms. Price?
Just want to say a big thank you. We have a lot of programs, senior programs, mental health programs that rely so much on very little funding and whole lot of heart that goes into them, and this is definitely one of those. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Villio?
So I sit on the Commission on Aging, and Dr. Maguire, having Kate on there has been extremely beneficial. I really want to let you know how much I appreciate working with her. when I got on the county council, thinking about the county, aging at home gracefully was always a big concern for me. This population, the average age is 51 years old. You think about how many schools we have in Talbot County, and we have 2 senior centers for them to have activities. Thankfully, the YMCA is a great facility as well for them. I really like the St. Michael's YMCA model with the senior center in there. I just love the idea of people who have retired to St. Michael's going in to work out and getting to see little kids in the nursery. Kind of, it's the only opportunity for them to see some grandchildren, even if they're not there, as it kind of re-energizes them. But Talbot County has done some great things through the Commission on Aging, and I've really enjoyed working together. The transportation has been the biggest challenge, getting people the benefits that they need at home. But working with them, anybody who would like to get involved with Brooklet's Place, check them out on Facebook, check out the Commission on Aging on Facebook. Both are wealths of knowledge for all of us who have seniors in our families who are living here. And again, Kate, you've been great to work with. I really appreciate the information that you provided with us every single meeting when we meet each month. It was great having a direct contact in the health department, meeting with me on the county council to provide information back. I think it's an excellent model. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Villio. Mr. Lusher?
Thank you for the helpful presentation, and would a motion to approve the senior care plan be in order?
Sure.
I will move to approve.
No second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everything.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you so much for your
Yep.
support. It's really important to keep this program going, so
Yep.
thank you.
Okay.
And
Yes.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
got it.
Thank you. Thank you. Until next year.
Okay, next up is the Talbot County Public Schools FYI budget transfer here. Come on, Miss Sarah Jones, how are you?
I'm great.
Good.
How are you?
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm coming back. I was here in May. I told you I might be back to request a final budget transfer for the fiscal year just ended June 30, 2022. We had some late in the year things crop up that would put us over budget in our plant operations category. And so we would like to take some of our cost savings in our fixed charges area and use those to cover some of these additional costs in plant operations.
Okay.
Some of those items included, I had failed to remember that we pay our property and casualty insurance premiums once in the year, at the end of the year. And I forgot about that, and it's a big number. We have some replacement, we feel like we need some replacement maintenance vans. We have some from 2003 and 2005 that are just kind of on their last legs, limping along. There was some grading work. I believe we were notified by County Roads saying that they were working on Lovers Lane this summer, and sort of to marry up the improvements that they were doing on Lovers Lane to the parking lot into the White Marsh Elementary School, they needed to sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, kind of marry those two, the parking lot up to fix the grading, we'll just say. And then there were just some issues with some controls at the high school and White Marsh. Those are controls that we used in the central office to maintain, make sure things are, going okay at the schools, time, temperature, all that kind of stuff. We had a couple HVAC replacements that needed to happen, and we finished an audit of our security systems and our IT systems, and they recommended some additional physical security around some of our server rooms to prevent people from coming into the server rooms that shouldn't have access. So those are all projects that we wanted to do at the end of the year, basically, with those additional funds. So we're requesting, our board is requesting a $360,000 transfer from our fixed charges category up to our plant operations category.
Okay.
Ms. Jones, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Have these projects already been done?
some. For example, the Talbot County Roads, we did not control the timing of that project. That was performed by Talbot County Roads. So that happened this summer. The insurance premiums have been paid.
Before or after June 30th?
Before.
Okay. These should be in next year's budget. If you have $360,000 in savings or whatever the savings is, I'm not a fan of the May last minute, we should be knowing about each month where the different categories, the 13 categories or so, where those are falling. We don't get enough detail. But this happening at the end of September, 3 months later, these projects, if they've been done after June 30th, should be fiscal year 23. And if you have savings that you have from fiscal year 22, then you can maybe apply them to the next budget. But for this to happen 3 months after the end of the budget year, on some projects, okay, maybe the county roads or whatever, there's something with timing on that. But buying maintenance vans, you don't do that after the budget year ends. Adding HVAC systems and whatnot, those are projects, things that should be done and accounted for in the fiscal year in which they occur. So again, I'm not a huge fan of May, but at least it's before June 30th. So while these may be projects that need to be done, they should be approved through a regular budget process through your Board of Education in the fiscal year in which they occur. So I have never in 12 years ever had, that I can remember, coming after the end of the fiscal year. Certainly not 3 months later. So while these projects may be worthy, this is not okay in my book, because they're not in the proper fiscal year. So if you want to take savings from 1 year and apply it to the next budget that you're getting ready to do, I just don't think that this is proper in the way this is being done.
I hear you. I'd have to go back and look, but my understanding is that this has happened in the August-September timeframe quite often in the past. And the reason for it is sometimes that in the process of closing the books over the summer in preparation for the audit, there's a lot of reconciling and a lot of final things that get cleaned up in that time frame.
But these are projects, these are vans. I can't remember some of these types of projects, where you're actually building something or buying something. If a health insurance premium comes in late, something like that, that is a little bit more understandable. But some of the things that are listed here, doing upgrades to the server, doing things to the HVAC, doing the vans and things like that, those are things, and I don't think that's right. I think they should go through a proper budget approval with your Board of Education and come back, next year for what you put in front of your Board of Education in the fall that I guess pretty much gets approved around December, January timeframe.
Mrs. Jones, is this your first budget cycle?
No.
Or this is the second one?
No.
It's my second fully complete one. It's kind of 2.5. The only thing I would say is, and I take what you're saying, I think with plan operations, it's impossible to know the things that are going to break and the things that are going to happen in a year. And so the way we approach the budget is Mr. Shafer puts together a budget, and I think we historically have had extremely low maintenance cost in relation to the value of our plant and the age of our plant. So, we do take those projects very seriously, but would not be considered, most of these would not be considered a major project. For example, the HVAC replacements, that was 3 HVAC units over the course of a summer that failed. So, we can't not.
But they should be in fiscal year 23 is what I'm saying. They shouldn't be in fiscal year 22.
Well, we want them to run as lean as possible, and unfortunately, we know, as we're going to see later on this evening, things do come up, and in the summertime, that's when HVAC breaks. I recognize that, this is Dr. Pepikai's first, couple months onto the job. I think I've yet to actually meet her formally in this setting, and although look forward to it. And I did see one of the vans the other day at work with a big rust hole in the side of it, so I recognize what's going on there. I would be willing to make a motion to approve the categorical change of $360,000 from fixed charges without any additional funds from the county.
Second.
Again, so my last comment is it's the
Wait.
wrong fiscal year. They may be worthy projects, but it's the wrong fiscal year, in my opinion.
Mr.
I
Pack?
just had a
Mr.
question
Pack.
for Ms. Jones. Ms. Jones, the work that the roads department did on the White Marsh parking area, was that billed to you by invoice?
Yes.
Invoice to?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And that was work that we were doing on the county road that abutted that parking area.
Yes, I believe we got a notification in June. Is that about right?
It was for the tie-ins to the parking lot from the Lover's Lane work that the county was doing. So it was Warren and I collaborated, and he invoiced us for that work.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have received post budget requests to move funds around in school budgets, so this is not unusual. I can't sit here and tell you per item what they were for, but I know I've surely received emails when I was county president asking to move things around. And since these are under operation of plant, again, you don't know when a fan is going to break. You know, don't know when something's going to fail on you. So you have to make those changes in real time. And since these are savings that you've indicated, and they're not going to impact county budget, I will certainly support the amendment made by Mr. DeVillio.
Okay. Madam Secretary, we've got a motion second. Could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
No.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sarah. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on. The next would be the Talbot County School FY '24 Capital Improvement Plan. Mr. Shafer, how you doing?
Good.
Good. Good.
Good evening, members of the council.
It should be. Yep.
So once again, good evening,
Yeah.
members of the council. I come before the council this evening to request consideration of two items, the first of which is the FY '24 Capital Improvement Plan. The entire CIP document has been provided, and my presentation tonight is meant to primarily highlight the details surrounding the request that, if approved tonight, would require funding in FY '24. So the next three slides, the first three slides of the presentation, all pertain to the IAC Form 102, which is a request for major construction. And some of these forms have changed this year, and I find that it's easiest just to kind of walk through the highlights of the forms, and it kind of becomes a discussion. So I invite the council to please feel free to ask any questions, and I will try and answer them as we go through these. So, as I said, this is the beginning of Form 102, and I just wanted to draw the council's attention to, this is related to Chapel District Elementary School, the replacement project, and this is a planning request, and this is the first priority for this year's submission, and the cost associated with this request would be for the design of the eventual replacement school. So highlighted in green is the 1.25 million, which would be the state portion of the architectural fees based on the state formula for calculating how much that estimated cost would be. This is a new factor associated with the state formula, as they are now participating in the design fees. Typically, that was a county cost solely. And then in blue at the bottom there, it's hard to read, apologize for that, but that is the state share of construction costs for FY '25 and FY '26, and of course, those are projected based on the state's formula. Next slide shows the summary of once again from Form 102, but it gives a summary of the breakdown of estimated costs, once again based on the state formula. And I will say that I know this is different cost information than what the council has seen previously, and it is obviously it's a little bit more than what was included in the feasibility study, which were projections done by the architect at the time.
Can you just remind us what that number was? Ballpark?
Yes. Yeah, so it's approximately 3.1 million more than what the architect estimated the cost to be. Now, as we said back in May when we presented the feasibility study to the council, and I think most people are aware that currently the market is very hard to predict, and so the state has gone very cautious on their predictions. In other words, they have continued to raise their projections for construction costs. Back in Easton Elementary times, they would, when we were planning that building, it was $325 a square foot for just building construction. That's what the state recognized. Now it's up to $385. So just in those few years, we've seen a whatever percent increase that is, a 15, 16% increase. So once again, this is all projections, estimations from the state, and this is something that obviously we would have to, once we get to that point, assuming that there's approvals, that we would go through the bid process and find out what the actual market rate is at the time. So just to cover the highlighted numbers there, the estimated state funding from the first slide carries over. The 13.7 million is what the state participation would be based on their funding formula. County or local funds would be right around the 16 million for a total cost of 29.7 million for the replacement of chapel. Now, this slide, once again, part of Form 102, is used by the state to determine, and this kind of gets a little into the weeds a little bit here, but bear with me. It is a form that is looking at the adjacent schools, and the only adjacent school for chapel is Easton Elementary School. So what this form does is it looks at the capacity of Easton Elementary School versus what the 7th year enrollment projection is, and it subtracts the state's participation based on that difference. So to put that more plainly, if, and I'm just going to use round numbers here, but if the Easton Elementary the state recognizes has a capacity of 1,200 students, and there's 1,100 currently attending, then they would take that 100 students and subtract it from what they would contribute to chapel, because they consider that a excess capacity that students could go to Easton Elementary from the chapel district.
Is there a boo-boo in year 2026 for Easton Elementary? Has to be.
Yes, I'm sorry, you are correct, Laura. That is a boo-boo.
Would that be 1156?
That should be 1156. My apologies there. So, thankfully, that's not the number we're using for calculation here, but it would be much worse than what is up there. But ultimately, the difference based on the 2028 enrollment projection, there's a 150 student difference between capacity and what the projected enrollment is for Easton Elementary. So what I'm trying to do here is making this a long story, but ultimately I have submitted a waiver request back in the first week of September, so September 10th or 8th, I think, asking the state to waive the adjacent schools issue for when considering chapel. They did waive the adjacent schools when we did Easton Elementary, and all of the adjacent schools, which would be White Marsh Chapel and St. Michael's Elementary, they waived all of those excess capacity, the excess capacity to each of those buildings. And my hope was that we'd be grandfathered in because it was just a few years ago that they waived it, but they do not, or they will not, and so so they're currently considering that. And I do expect that we will hear something on that topic here very shortly.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Back to when we did Easton Elementary, and the county picked up additional costs because you told us that we needed that capacity, that the state wasn't recognizing it, and it doesn't seem like that capacity has come to fruition. Yet we paid more than our 50%. to
Yes.
build, I don't remember how many extra students that, you know, you guys were absolutely sure the state was wrong and we needed to build a bigger capacity school, and now we're down couple hundred kids, even, you know, 10 years out.
Yes, that is correct. And so I guess what I would say in response to that, Ms. Price, is that the council at the last meeting that we had regarding the Chapel District Elementary School replacement project, which was the feasibility study, we discussed at length the multiple residential housing developments that are taking place and the council's concern about, you know, the lack of potential capacity when looking into the future. It's only been a couple years since Easton Elementary's been completed, and this is probably going to take some time to really kind of play out. And the Easton Elementary School is a minimum of 30-year building, so I still say that we will realize that.
Sure,
that
but I can tell you, when we approved the number, we were not talking about Lakeside, we were not talking about these other two developments. That was not part of the conversation that, oh, we have these three big housing developments coming. When we approved this, I don't know, 6 years ago, something like 5 or 6 years ago.
And I do agree with you, and I understand your point. But similar to what I explained for Chapel, so the existing buildings, and once again, this gets complicated quickly, but the existing buildings at Easton Elementary School and the existing Chapel building is undersized by the state's own formula. So classrooms are smaller than they should be. And so the state recognizes that the building should be X number of square feet larger than it is. And so that's where that discrepancy comes in. And it is very difficult when designing a building, especially of the size of Easton Elementary School. It's less so for Chapel, but you don't just look at the size of the classrooms. There's all of the common areas that go into, and that's an efficiency factor that gets beyond my intellect, but the architects have to calculate that square footage, and they do the best that they can, maintaining fire code and all the kind of things that go into designing a building. And so it's never, I'm going to say this, I want it to be perfect. I want the exact square footage to come out how we project it to, but once the building enters the design phase, there's going to be inefficiencies and efficiencies based on the building design itself. So that ends up causing a square footage difference, and that's where that extra cost came from, because the state only recognizes, X number of square feet. In this case, for Chapel, right now the projected enrollment at the 7th year, which is actually 10 years, but at the 7th year of enrollment projections, 366 is the number that they're going to recognize if we were designing it today. And so based on that formula, 140 gross square feet per student, they come up with the number, and that's it. That's the final number for them. And so when there's a discrepancy, the county ends up owning that. And we do our best to try to minimize that, I guess. And that was a long answer to your question.
Yeah.
What's the first column? It says year, and then it says SRC, and then under Chapel it says 431.
Yes, so the state rated capacity, the
State
current
rated capacity.
state rated capacity is 431 for Chapel. Current enrollment is 347. I believe that is correct
So
still.
you want to build it for 431, but the state's only recognizing 366.
So that's where it gets complicated. So you hit the nail on the head. So I am only asking for a building that has a capacity from a state perspective of 366. That's all I can ask for. So.
But you're, again, same thing. You're doing, this is happening just like at Easton Elementary. You said you want a bigger school.
No. So
431,
maybe
no?
I'm not doing a very good job of
Okay.
explaining it, because what I am trying to do is get the maximum state participation while trying to keep the cost of the county at a 50% split.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be some things that the state doesn't participate in, like contingencies and things like that. But what we've done is taken that 366, which we hope the state will recognize if we get the adjacency waiver, and we've done the math, multiplied the 140 gross square feet out, and we're trying to build a building that's that size. So we're not trying to increase the square footage, but we will be, because the state recognizes a greater square footage than what we currently have. So, and this gets into the next question, and I know that this is a topic that's going to come up, replacement versus renovation. So if you look at option 2, which is what we presented, one of the things that we presented at the feasibility study meeting, is that the renovation addition, that additional square footage is only the additional square footage that the state will participate with, give or take some, because there's always going to be some discrepancy there. But that's our goal. We're trying to get maximum state participation and minimize the county's portion and strike a balance.
One last question, going back one slide. The reason there's a difference under building, where it says estimated local funds 11.1 million,
Yes.
and the state at 9.8 million, is because of the 150 student differential because of the adjacent school, which we might hope might get waived, and then those numbers would match?
No. So the difference between the 11.16 million of local funds and the 9.5 of state funds is the issues surrounding, well, two things. So there are portions of Chapel that are not 30 years old. So we had two additions, the Critchlow Atkins Center, and then there was a kindergarten classroom addition of 2 classrooms. So there's going to be discrepancy there. The state will only participate in 65% of those of the square footage associated with those 2
But kindergarten's
spaces.
mandated. Why would they not participate in the kindergarten?
Because those areas of the building are not to the 30-year standard. They haven't reached that age yet. So they're only going to participate 65% of those 2 areas. So that is one factor associated with that. And then the other is what we're talking about. There is a 1,500 square foot discrepancy between what the state square footage recognizes and what the feasibility study has projected. So once again, it comes back to that efficiency ratio. Right now, and once again, this is an architect's topic for discussion, but I will do my best to explain it. So we take all of the instructional spaces, all of the administrative spaces, all of the accounted for spaces in the design, and then we have to apply an efficiency ratio to that. And right now, the goal is 0.7. It's really super efficient if you can reach 0.7 efficiency. And so what you do is multiply the square footage by that 0.7, add it to the total, and you end up with a total square footage, which we come out to the 50. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to do the math in my head here. 53, 54, about 54,600 square feet, and so that is slightly higher than what the state recognizes. So there is going to be some square footage that the county is going to have to fund based on what the architect determined the square footage to be based on the ed spec and feasibility study. So what I would say,
unless the council just said, no, we're only going to fund what the state will match and not go over and above. I mean, that is something that should at least be a conversation. It'll be after my time on this council.
yes,
But it is a question should be answered. The county, the 5 people that are sitting up here shouldn't just accept that, yeah, you're going to fund an extra bit of square footage or extra classrooms that aren't at 30 years. Maybe you add on to the building later where you can get 50% from the state. I mean, those options I just feel like should be presented. The council is usually only presented with one thing, and it's over and above what the state will match. I think that it would, especially with new council members coming up here, they should have all the information, and they should see what it would look like at the 50-50 match and what it would look like with what you would like to have.
yes, I agree 100% with you.
It's only fair.
Yes, and I am in 100% agreement. I guess the thing that I would caution the council on regarding this topic is that similar to Easton Elementary School, there was a lid placed on how much participation. We talked about this at the feasibility study. There's a lid placed on how much participation the council would have in that project, and we built to that number. Now, in Chapel's case, it is going. There's the complicating issue of right now, all of this is based on replacement. Should that not be what happens? Should it be a renovation addition? which it's still up in the air. The state has not given they have not weighed in on what they think would be appropriate in this case. If it is a renovation addition, the cost potentially, in theory, will come down across the board. So these numbers are only because of the current plan and the uncertainty around what the square footage will be in a building that hasn't been designed yet. That's really what it comes down to. So we haven't designed it. Once we do that, if that option is accepted and we move forward with it, then we would know much more, with much greater detail, what the square footage would be. And so I am erring on the side of caution in the sense that I'm going with what the professionals recommend the square footage to be, which is the architect.
Okay. Mr. Lusher?
I think I just heard you say this, but approval of this CIP does not lock us into new construction. It leaves open both of those other options that you earlier outlined, which would be renovation alone or renovation plus addition. That any of those still remain on the table at this stage of the approval process.
That is correct. Yes.
And that's contingent on funding being available at the time that.
This is just saying we're going to do something. What
Yeah.
that something is, but and this goes back to, and I remember when the first proposal for the Eastern Elementary School was for that renovation of both buildings. If you remember, I think Gail Seacrest was still here with us at that time, and I remember council taking a look at that with you all and saying, hey, it's probably best to go ahead and do a new building, which turned out to be a great alternative. So here, this council probably won't be able to see what that second option would be as far as a remodel. I guess if it was me, I would have probably leaned more towards a new building, to serve the Chapel District. There's going to be some growth up there, we do know, especially with the wastewater treatment plant coming online at the preserve at Y Mills. So it's probably best that you plan for a 30-year building rather than a 15-year building.
Yes.
So
Am I so the enrollment right now is 347.
The enrollment currently, as of
Yeah.
as of today.
As of today.
Yeah, as of today, it's actually yes, it is 347.
I just want to get it in my head. So we're planning for 27 at 366. So that's roughly 19 students. So all I'm sort of thinking through when we're sitting here talking is in 5 years we're thinking of 20 kids of growth. So am I sort of?
Yeah, you are.
That's the state's formula, though.
That's the state's.
Well, that's kind of where I was headed with this. I was headed with this. So they're thinking of their calculations and not our growth.
That's right. That's right. They don't recognize the.
They don't
developments
recognize
that are
our
happening.
growth.
Yes. Yes.
So, at the end of the day, that's what leads to overcrowding in schools, is that because they can still have 30 kids in the classroom if that's what happens in the population. Is that correct?
It is, Mr. DeVillio, and the state, I can just basically say that they're reactive rather than proactive on this. They want to see proof before they fund it.
Do you know, I mean, information always calms fears. Do you know what they want to see or what the ideal number of kids per classroom is?
Well,
14 is a real low, hopefully.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be 14. So it depends on the age group. But 1 through 5, I know is their target goal. Their target number is 22.
Okay.
So in an ideal world, that you can have more than that, but that's the number.
Okay.
So what I would be hearing from you, if we want to go above that, we pitch in more.
No. So, so the state really doesn't get involved in how many kids are in our classrooms. All they're doing is, based on the formula that they have, it's two parts. It's the state rated capacity of the building, and then it's the enrollment projection. So that's the only two factors that really affect funding other than the adjacency issue.
So how do we go about if we want that number to be 400?
if you want the state to recognize 400 students,
Yeah.
it's solely on enrollment projections. So that's the only factor that they will look at. And that is based on Maryland Department of Planning doing enrollment projections in conjunction with our consultants. We work with, the county planners, the town planners, and give as much information as we can. But ultimately, the Maryland State Department of Planning gives projections, and we have to be within 5% of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Gives us something to think about, council. So,
So,
okay.
yeah, just to kind of, one other thing I wanted to share, I guess, about Chapel,
Sure.
is that I did receive news that the IAC was presented the feasibility study today. So that's the governing body that makes the determination on how we proceed, or how the state will proceed with the Chapel request. So I will hopefully know something very soon about that. And then one of the precursors to that decision was the adjacency issue that I talked about. And so I just want to be very clear with the council on this issue. They did not want to make a determination on the feasibility study without making a determination on the adjacency issue first. I've heard neither determination, but it was all decided today at some point. So hopefully this week I'll hear something informally. But if the adjacency waiver request is rejected, that would mean that the state participation would be reduced by about $5 million.
So shouldn't, and this is a little premature then, I mean, shouldn't you wait, if you think this answer is coming in the next week or so,
So the only
shouldn't
reason,
we be
yeah,
looking at real information since it's forthcoming soon?
well, and so yes, I would like to be able to do that. The problem is schedule. So I have to submit this information to the state this week, and so I have to have all these documents prepared. I have to make sure that we're ready for submission, and I have been charged by the Board of Ed to continue on with the replacement plan. Now, should the state come back and say, hold on a second, no, what I would like to be able to do, and this is really the gist of it, of the Chapel issue for the council, is what Mr. Pack and Mr. Lesher talked about, is I need to be able to communicate to the state that the council is on board for some work at Chapel, whether that's a renovation, addition, or replacement. That's still yet to be determined. So I know, Ms. Price, I know this is frustrating for you because I understand your concerns that, but what I would say before you even get to it is that this is a non-committal. This is a non-commitment. It's just stating that the council's interested in moving forward in some fashion with Chapel.
And we did the same thing with Easton Middle School.
Right.
This is not anything foreign for us to do. Ms. Sparks, have you ever a chance to look at this at all?
Yes, I've looked over it.
Okay. Any opinion? Okay.
So one thing I did provide the council, and I know it was last minute, was similar to what I did for Easton Elementary School, was provided a summary of what I project the cost to be. So at your leisure, it's not that much different, honestly, not like it was for Easton Elementary School. But I guess the thing that I would be aware of as a council is that these state numbers, especially for design at 10%, it's outrageous in my opinion. We were more at 5% for Easton Elementary School for the cost for the architect to design the building. So that's $1 million savings right there. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. And you would certainly have, I mean, we'll have to go through a procurement process should the council decide to provide support. Then as we move forward with the design process, there would be, it would be an RFQ, RFP process, and you would know what the real cost would be.
Right. Well, again, Mr. Callahan,
Yeah.
I would, if you were entertained, we're talking about a building a school building that was originally built in 1952 with several additions, the last one being in 2001. I think we know, as a county, that's going to be some moderate growth out in that sector of the county. So it appears that the school board has a violent claim to either remodel this building or do a complete tear down and rebuild. So all they're asking us to do is acknowledge that to the state, but something has to happen out there. I think it's going to fall squarely on the next council as to what they're working with the school board as to what that will be.
Right.
So,
Right. Okay.
I would seek, I would make a motion that we approve the chip.
There's more. There's more.
Or the White Marsh part of it too?
Yeah.
You want to do it in pieces or the whole thing?
So that's going to be up to you.
Well, I won't take it in pieces, but you can wait. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so why don't I go through the rest of the
Okay, go ahead.
request, and
Yeah.
and it is something. So let's just move right into White Marsh. All right, so there is one other funding request, and I got scolded jokingly. I'm saying a little bit by Ms. Price last year for lack of communication on the chapel front, and so in an effort to avoid another round of that.
Jokingly.
We feel your pain.
How I would justify this surprise to the council is, so the request, let me say the request first. The request is for funding to replace the roof at White Marsh Elementary School. Total cost of that roof is $1.87 million. The local funds would be $987,000 and $891,000 for the state. The reason why this is a new request and not one that was previously brought to the council's attention is another long-winded discussion, but I'm going to try to make it very short. So the state, as I've talked to the council before, the state is conducting their own assessments of our buildings through what's called a facility condition index, and that is part of the overall Maryland condition index that they're coming up with. Two facets to that, the building condition, and then there's the educational sufficiency aspect to it. That's going to be the formal ranking of every school building. We talked about that in the state based on those two factors. So the preliminary, or the data for the FCI, the facility condition indexing, has been completed. We've had state inspectors come to the buildings. They did that late last fall after the CIP process last year. And they rated the White Marsh roof our lowest rated capital asset. And they basically informed the Board of Ed through those assessments that the remaining useful life of that roof is approximately 2 years, and that it is 5 years past its existing, or its useful life as they determined it. I included a supplemental packet for the council that just has some pictures and the actual portion of the report that pertains to the White Marsh roof, but I know the pictures don't show a lot, but this is my justification for what I'm about to share. So we too have our maintenance staff that also assess our buildings and each of the parts of our building infrastructure. And the White Marsh roof is a somewhat unique one, at least for our staff. It is what I knew as a built-up roof. It is it's a ballasted roof, so it's got large river stones on it, which is very unusual. And so the entire roof is covered by these large stones. And come to find out, through this assessment, it's a single ply membrane underneath those stones, and it is failing. So through that process, we kind of got our attention drawn to it a little more closely, and then started reviewing the data. I will admit that we are short-staffed. We put out fires, so when there's a roof leak, we either fix it ourselves or we get a contractor to fix it. And after starting to look at the data a little bit more, that roof has been incurring more costs. Now, in terms of replacement, I'm not talking huge numbers. Last year it was approximately $20,000 we spent on roof repairs at White Marsh, and that is more than we spent in the last 5 years. So we've seen more leaks down at that building, and so I would be remiss if I didn't include it as a funding request because the state has identified it as a very significant issue. So that is why I've listed it as a second priority for funding.
I hope those stones are really beautiful. I don't know why they're on top of a roof. I hope we can recycle those and put them somewhere.
And I know this isn't there were too many variables to try to compare, but just for dollar value, what did we spend on the high school roof?
About 4.1.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that for?
4.1.
On the high school roof.
Yeah. So, so I am making the request to have White Marsh included as a submission for funding. I don't know if the state is going to participate. I'm assuming that they will because of their own observation. Yeah, right. But I don't know that for sure. So that is another kind of unknown with this, but that is why I'm asking the council to support it. And then if we do get state funding, then it is an added cost. But the last thing, and I know I'm taking up a lot of time here, but there's a lot of changes at the state in how basically the entire function of the CIP process is changing. And so a very quick point to make. What has been communicated to me is that there is a 10-year moving average, basically, that they use for a planning tool. And so on average, what they've determined, Talbot generally gets about $2.3 million per year from the state for capital projects. And so for their planning purposes, they're using that number for a decision-making process. Now, it's not a hard and fast decision-making process, but it is being used for budgeting for them. So I know that this doesn't necessarily translate into an issue for the council directly, but for us, it has been conveyed to me by state representatives, our regional facility managers that work with us with the state, that should be a target that we're trying to hit, so that if we don't have requests, that average goes down, and then we start to see reduced funding from the state, or more likely to receive reduced funding. And Ms. Price, I know that you're aware of this, but this whole Maryland condition indexing that's taking place with the IAC, there is some risk to smaller counties because of how they're doing things. And so if we allow for the state to use this planning tool to reduce funding annually, and we're being challenged because other counties have more needs, it is a little concerning from my perspective, as a facilities manager, that we're seeing an ever-eroding state funding participation. And so I know it's not perfect justification for the council to consider trying to meet that 10-year average, but it does support the state's process when it comes to making decisions on their funding on their end. So.
Okay.
I hope
Well,
that
the other
made
thing,
sense.
I'm going to repeat it one more time. It's not about you guys. This conditioning that, look, a roof is a roof and all that, but this process that they go through actually rewards schools with capital money if they didn't take care of their, more the inside and whatnot, and keep up with the maintenance inside the plant. I mean, I will say, that you guys have always done a great job of maintaining the plants, and so that we don't need to do things as much. And it was very frustrating when they brought that in. It's like, okay, let's just let our building fall apart and we're going to get capital money. And so there's definitely a flaw in that. And I hope that they take that into consideration going forward, that if you just kind of let it fall into disrepair, we're not going to give you capital money for that.
Right. And I do think, just so the council's aware, I do think there's another arm to this, which is the maintenance effectiveness assessments. It's another new aspect to the state process. And so I do think they're trying to hold counties more accountable to maintain their buildings better. So there is another side to it, but your point is taken, and
Right.
it is something that I've heard many times from especially smaller counties.
Okay, all right. Okay, so do I have a motion? Got a motion.
I'll move approval of the CIP.
And I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So one more very quick topic.
You're a brave man, Captain.
I know. Well, so this is actually something that the state provided to the council directly. So pass-through grant funding. It was funding that was generated through Senate Bill 291. The pass-through grant goes directly to county councils and county commissioners to approve for the school systems, the boards of education to use. And so one of the things that in last year's local capital requests, the council was gracious enough to approve a shade structure at White Marsh Elementary School. And part of the reason for that request was we're trying to start to meet the requirements of the pre-K implementation. And those standards for pre-K implementation require a shade structure be on campus for outside classroom use or next to the playground so that there's an area for kids to get out of the sun. And so my very amateur presentation here on this 2 slides, just very quickly, the Talbot allocation is $45,783 for the council to make a determination on. And basically, as I stated, because of the standards for early childhood programs and the implementation of a 3-year-old program, which is coming very soon, in some fashion that's still being worked out, I'm looking to get a shade structure on the remaining elementary schools with that funding, and those schools would be Easton Elementary, which we did not include in that new construction there. It wasn't something that was a thing at the time, and St. Michael's Elementary School and Tillman Elementary School. Relatively large shade structures, and that funding would allow for installation of all of those. Now, it would not allow for any kind of surface material, so we're going to have to do that in-house with mulch or something like that.
Hey, maybe those rocks coming off the roof. Just kidding.
Yeah, right.
Can you
yeah.
back up a slide, though? I just want to point this out
Yes.
to the public, that, this is 16 jurisdictions having to split a measly $2 million. The larger 8 jurisdictions get a boatload more money. And this is, look, anything is nice, but when you think about what those numbers are for those larger jurisdictions, and millions and millions and millions of dollars for those jurisdictions, and we ended up with $45,000. $2 million to split amongst 16 jurisdictions.
Yeah. I think it was 80 million, I think, was what the total allocation was.
Was it 80?
For those, whatever.
Yeah, and we get 2.
Just look
We
at
have
Queen
this.
Anne's.
We have the largest elementary school in the entire state. People are astounded when I tell them that, and yet we don't get anywhere near the funding for these types of projects.
It's really enrollment based. So in the states, defense total number of students is what drives that. So, but yeah. So I am asking the council for approval to submit the grant request to the IAC for the shade structures. And it's primarily because it's not something that would be funded in any other way. I can't use aging schools. I can't use capital improvement for it.
Hey,
so.
with that, I'll make a motion for that.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second, Madam
So Kevin,
Secretary.
does the funds actually come down to us, or are they held at the state for us to just draft?
Honestly, Mr. Pack, I am not sure if they come to us. Once you provide a letter of approval, I don't know if they come directly to us or if they go through the county funds. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. All right, we got a motion second, Madam Secretary. Could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Thank you very much. And I will get out of your way.
Yeah. Well, good job, Kevin. I know you work hard for this stuff, so you did a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Conley.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to introduction of numbered resolutions. Madam Secretary, could you go ahead and read the resolution, please, into the record?
A resolution approving the sale of 2 contiguous and adjacent parcels of unimproved real property having an address of 112 South Main Street, Trapppe, Maryland, and further described as Tax Map 301, Parcel 1745, consisting of 4.318 acres of land, more or less, and 2 having an address of Main Street, Trapppe, Maryland, and further described as Tax Map 301, Parcel 1751, to the Town of Trapppe, a Maryland municipal corporation, for the sum of $1, subject to certain conditions.
Okay, thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Thomas, you will go ahead and bring everybody up to speed on this one?
Sure. So this was a resolution requested by the town of Trapppe, and it was requested to be introduced by Councilmember DeVillio. So this would transfer two parcels of property to the town that are being used as a park and playground area for $1 on the condition that the town would take over the operation and maintenance and keep it in good condition for the use of the general public through 2028.
Okay, okay.
So it's currently a park, but it's going to be used for their government, the town council building?
It's 4+ acres, so I think, and I don't know if anybody from the town is here that might give some additional comment.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not going to be like they're just taking over a park space. They're actually going to use it for their town office,
It's a
right?
couple defunct baseball fields in the back, kind of butt up to the Harrison Circle neighborhood. Mr. Schmidt, if you would like come up and you can
Yeah.
fill us in
Yeah,
on.
come on up, Mr. Smith. Yep. Yep, fine.
So, yes, actually, so when I
Could
was
you
growing
go,
up.
could you tell us who?
Oh,
Yeah.
my apologies.
No
Brian
problem.
Schmidt, town of Trapppe.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, that's where our baseball fields were. My understanding is, talking with some of the older folks in town, that has always been a county property. I haven't been able to figure out when you guys bought it. Or it came into your possession. So, I mean, you guys have owned it for a pretty significant period of time. Once Home Run Baker Park was built, basically the ballpark, the area that we're talking about was, I don't want to say abandoned, but it's significantly less used. There's like a playground equipment for some younger children towards the front, right next to St. Paul's Church. But back where the ball fields were, that's really just grass. You guys are just cutting grass.
And it fell with the Parks Board recommendation. We recognize that there are properties in the county that the county owns that they no longer maintain and use, just cut the grass. It's an expense. And when TRAPPE came to us with a plan to better utilize the property, the Parks Board recommendation was to turn it over to them to utilize it appropriately.
Mr. Smith, can you speak to your plan for requesting the property to be conveyed?
I think there's not been anything specifically stated. There's, let's say, some hearsay about, I think eventually we would like to put up a new building there, a new town hall in that space. Again, nothing's been set in stone or anything like that.
I mean, it's in the letter that was written to us on July 13th from President of the Trapppe Town Council. Says there's not enough space at the existing town office to construct a town office. And
again, I mean, we haven't hired an architect. We haven't put a resolution through our council. We haven't done anything. I mean, again, it's just something we've generally been talking about. The building we have now, I mean, I believe was built in 1932 as a fire department. Honestly, again, when I was growing up, the upstairs we used for Boy Scouts. And then somewhere the town took that spot back over and
right, but I'm just saying the whole gist of the letter says the town is interested in acquiring the property so the town may use it for a new Trapppe Town office. So just interesting that you said it's just hearsay, whatever, but that's how the letter was titled to us.
So, well, hearsay maybe isn't the proper
No,
word.
I'm not saying
but,
it's
I
a
mean,
bad use, but it's just, I think as a count.
He's one of, what, 5? So
yeah, again, I mean, hearsay is probably not
there's a plan.
Yeah, hearsay is probably not the proper term, but again, it's nothing, again, we haven't put a resolution together. The bulk of us on the council have not talked about what we want to do. It's just in the future, somewhere in the future, I don't know if that's 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, I don't know. That yes, we'll probably wind up putting a new town hall there.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
I guess I'm kind of puzzled with. I thought this was more of a concrete request from the town of Trapppe to acquire this property from the county for the purpose drafted in the letter. I know that the Parks and Recs director, Mr. Pepper, had some concern that the back side of that park remain open for public access. So I was hoping to hear that a plan was more unified from the Trapppe Council as to why you wanted the parcel and what your plans were for development of some portion of it, and then the remaining portion to remain open space, but I'm not hearing that. So I'm kind of stuck as to what I want to do here.
So, I mean, me personally, it's hard for me to plan to say this is all I'm going to do with something that I don't have. I think we all in the back of our minds have ideas of what we would like to do with that property. I know that there's been something mentioned where we would maintain the public area that's up front, the playground equipment for, I think, the life of the playground, which is the next 20, 30 years, which is perfectly well. Again, I mean, I think this is something that the county and the town, again, I'm not 1 year in with the town itself. So, I mean, my understanding is that this is something that's been talked about, I don't know, several months, several years. I mean, for a little, my understanding is it's been batted back and forth with the county off and on over time. Again, I mean, it's once.
Is there going to be a public hearing on this?
Yes, this is, well, this would be
Introduction. This is introduction. That's all
So
it
we've
is.
got some time on this because this
Yeah.
letter
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
all 5 council members' names at the top of the letterhead, and it's signed by your president, and it talks about using it for a town office. Before I transfer something, I want to know exactly what it's going to be used for. I get that we're maintaining it, and it's not really utilized. I understand that piece of it. But before I give something away for $1, I think that we really ought to have something, known as to what it's going to be used for, whether a portion of it, like Mr. Pack said, is going to be kept open for a park. We know what happens when playgrounds disappear, right? Yeah. So, maybe your town attorney and the president of your council should be here with more information, because I don't think that you really know exactly what this is for. So if it's set for public hearing, that's fine, and we can go through the process.
Yes, and I think this was sort of, there might have been some confusion, probably on my part, about this could have gone as disbursement of, under closed session as dispersing property. But you're right. What I'd like to do tonight is introduce this, get a number on it, schedule some public hearings, and then move forward from there with a plan of action.
Yeah,
I think
and that's
that
fine.
would be pretty simple.
Yes, if I know that you guys are looking for, this is a concrete plan of this much is going to be open space, this is what we're thinking about for doing a public building, I mean, that's fine. I can certainly get those details together. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that's exactly what this was. Otherwise, I'd have brought a set of plans with me.
But this is just introduction. This is
okay.
the first
I'm
step.
sorry.
If no one introduces, it goes nowhere.
Sure. So
Right.
yeah. Again, I guess that's why I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay, no problem. Okay, raise the hands at introduction. Madam Secretary, could you go ahead and give us the resolution number and the public hearing and time?
Yes, this will be known as resolution number 337. The public hearing will be on Tuesday, October 18th at 6:30 p.m.
Okay, all right, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Okay,
What was that hearing date again?
the 18th of October.
No, can you move that for me, please? The 8th,
Yeah,
is that,
let's
we haven't
move
even.
that to the 25th.
Yeah.
Mr. Pack won't be here.
Yeah,
And possibly, yeah.
So that means that we have to have the public hearing and vote on it in the same night.
Sure. Go before.
Not always a fan of doing that, because sometimes things come out and things need to be amended, and
Look at the November meeting.
no, we can't vote on anything in November.
Well, as long as you can vote on it, you can't introduce it.
Nope.
No
You have-
legislation
We cannot.
can be passed after the last meeting in October.
So I don't know whether it would make sense to do the public hearing, which you could watch after the fact, and then, well, it's online to watch it, and then vote on it the 25th.
Yeah, hold the vote till the 25th?
Yeah. Just have the public hearing so that if something comes out and you'd have a chance to listen to it, that makes more sense.
okay.
Of course, I don't know if I can be here the 18th either, so.
So first, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting. Is there a motion and a second to declare the 18th a special legislative day? That's not a normal council meeting day. However,
Will we have enough time if we do it on the 18th? Does it have to be 3 consecutive weeks for disposition of property?
Yes,
Yes,
the
sir.
30th, the 7th, and the
Okay.
14th.
So I will make a motion to declare October 18th an emergency,
Or special.
or a special legislative day, sorry.
Second.
Okay, got a motion, a second to move special legislation to October 18th. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Okay, great.
So we're back to the 18th for the public hearing, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
We may just have, both of us may have to watch them
right. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Speaking of the 18th.
Huh? Okay. All right, let's move on to, okay, introduction of legislation. Madam Secretary, could you read the bill into the record, please?
An emergency bill to authorize a capital project for the removal and replacement of the ice rink floor at the Talbot County Community Center, and to authorize an inter-project transfer of $950,000 from the appropriation approved by Bill number 1171 for the extension of water and sewer lines to the Talbot County Community Center to the capital project authorized hereunder.
Okay. Mr. Pepper?
So as you know, the
Can
the
you
ice
tell,
rink,
yeah, can you tell people who you are?
Preston Pepper, Parks and Recreation Director
There
of
you
Talbot
go,
County.
there you go.
So as you know, the floor has failed at the community center as far as the ice rink goes. The thought process is we thought we had just a small area that was not good as far as working, as far as cooling the ice. Last year, that's when we decided to try the cooling mat. It was something that we invested about $55,000 in last year. The thought was to get that through this ice season and then rip up the floor at the end of the ice season, have it ready for the following ice season. However, when we hooked everything up, plugged everything in, turned it on, we found out that it was still leaking, probably even worse than before, from a different area. I don't think people always understand. The ice rink is about 17,000 square feet. It's got about 11 miles of piping underneath that concrete. So any break in that pipe, anything in there is going to leak anywhere. I mean, the part that's leaking out where we have now, the hole in that pipe could be 100 feet in the other direction. There's no way to find it. So along with that, when we turned it on, even under a little bit of pressure, there were some other valves that were breaking on the end. So there's no way to salvage the floor immediately. So the request was made to council that we see about trying to find some way to mitigate that immediately by, requesting some kind of emergency funding, which is what brings us here today.
Okay.
So council, I'd like to thank you for speaking with me and working with Preston on this. I know the community, this is a significant asset to the Parks and Rec Department, one of many in his department. And this is a terrible failure to that department. I would like to, do the show of hands and get this moving forward, but I would also like for us to enable Preston to go ahead and save as much time as possible and move forward with disassembling the walls that they can in there, the rig walls, things like that. It's going to take a certain amount of time to do this project, and any time that he can save between now and the funding date, I would like for us to enable him as much as possible.
Okay. Ms. Price? Figure skater?
Figure skater, yeah. It's really unfortunate, but again, underneath the concrete, there was no way to know that. And maybe with going forward with, the gymnasium that's going to get built, this money will enable this ice season to be longer, 9 months, year round, something like that, which would maybe have less, I think as you explained to me, the fact that we have ice and we don't have ice, and you have expansion and contraction and all of that, and maybe we're lucky that it lasted 30 years. It is obviously a lot of money, and it's going to be very difficult for our figure skating program, hockey program, public skating, all of that. But let's cross our fingers that we can get this done and maybe be open by the first of the year.
And that's the goal, is to try to get this done as fast as possible. We already have, a vendor lined up that is willing to hit the ground running with it.
That's good.
And you are right, Ms. Price, this does open up, if the gym project does go through, this does open up an avenue to possibly leave ice in year-round.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Lusher.
Just, I think we've all been contacted by members of the community who are concerned about this. But to sum up my understanding of the situation is the current system of making ice in there is irreparably broken. There is no feasible temporary fix that will get us through this ice season. And the proposed solution, this emergency legislation for complete replacement, is the most expeditious way that we are going to get ice back and salvage at least part of the upcoming season. Is that fair?
Yes.
Now, do we have to have a public hearing on this emergency bill?
Yes.
So how does that leave you with going forward?
So if the bill is introduced this evening, you would have a public hearing on October 18th, and if council chose to do so, you would vote that same evening, or worst case, you would vote on the 25th.
Does that put us another month behind?
It does.
And we're trying to get the ice up.
Yeah, so what's going to happen is the dasher boards will have to get all removed, and then the floor will have to completely be demoed out. Obviously, any time that can be spared and any time that we can get moving quicker does, work to our advantage. But I also understand that there are protocols and procedures that the
So
county
how is it
goes
an
by.
emergency bill if we still have to go through the 3-week process? How does that make it an emergency?
Well, it's 2 weeks, but the only difference is it becomes effective immediately instead of waiting 60 days.
Right.
So if you have the public hearing on the 18th and you vote on it on the 18th, it's effective the 18th.
And this was introduced without the usual 7-day notice to council members, so that's part of the expeditious
Correct.
matter of this as well.
Okay.
And in order to do that, it does take 4/5 of a vote. So that's why I was saying I would like to give Preston the authority, the support from the council tonight to show that we're willing to do this.
Yeah, I mean,
Mr.
if there are
Pack?
things that you can do to
What's that?
keep it moving.
Say something.
No, I mean, I've
Okay.
spoken to the
Okay.
director about this. I mean, it's very unfortunate, but you got a floor that's, 40-some years old, around about, give or take, and you have piping underneath of a plastic PVC piping that's failed because of the solution that runs through it. So, as they say, it is what it is.
Yep.
It has to be done. I think we've all explained why the emergency legislation is needed and the parameters around that. So I certainly support this. And for those hockey players and figure skaters, and just bear with us. We'll get this done as quickly as possible. Okay.
Okay. Can I
For
show
those
raise?
willing to start the work, I would say you've got my support.
Okay.
Yep.
But don't start jackhammering that floor just yet. Wait.
I would.
That's a process.
All right. Show raise of hands.
So by council,
This will be known as Bill number 1526, and the public hearing will be on Tuesday, October 18th at 6:30 PM.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Preston. Appreciate it.
Hang tight, the next one's on alcohol beverages.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Madam Secretary, you want to go ahead and read the next one, please?
A
Next
bill to amend Chapter 11 of the Talbot County Code, alcoholic beverages regarding hours of sales on Sundays.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, you want to explain that?
Sure. So this bill was requested by Councilmember Price, and what it would do is eliminate, so for all the classes of licenses they all have hours of sale, and pretty much all of them say the hours of sale are from this hour to this hour, except on Sundays, and they usually start later. So it would eliminate that except on Sundays requirement and treat all the days of sale the same. So the hours of sale would be the same every day.
Okay, that'd be great. And the hours are 6 to 10, right? 6 a.m.
It
to 10
depends
at
on
night?
the license.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Right, but I don't think anything starts till 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and this was primarily to help the hospitality industry who serve, a Sunday breakfast. and they miss half of their morning, being able to serve a mimosa or Bloody Mary or something like that. The simplest way, you know, Mr. Thomas said, was to just eliminate and treat every day of the week the same. I think it's kind of an old-fashioned blue law, if that's what you want to call it, and to treat every day of the week the same. Things are different. There's not. So, well, I guess we'll see what happens, you know, on a public hearing, whether you just wanted to limit it just to the hospitality industry, or whether you want it to apply, you know, other places. But the simplest way to draft it was just to eliminate any reference to Sunday, if people wanted to target more just the hospitality industry, for, you know, because our restaurants have really suffered, and that really helps them on Sunday mornings. You know, people go out to a nice breakfast and.
I'll tell you what you're going to see happen is a lot more people at the 8 o'clock church service.
Yeah. That's what you'll see. Exactly.
Well,
Anybody else?
Yeah, just preliminarily, and I'll
Yeah.
wait for the public hearing, if hopefully I'm here
Okay.
at that time. But, you know, I haven't heard a large outcry from the hospitality industry to make these changes. When we made changes to our liquor code in the past, you know, it was more comprehensively, and it involved the council hearing from other entities like the LDAC, TFN. So I have asked for them to weigh in to give their members a chance to weigh in on this change. I know all that went through the first liquor code rewrite some 10, 11 years ago when we did the rewrite, how many different people we heard from publicly about those changes and the different revisions that went through. This was a holdover from that rewrite, so hopefully we would hear back from TFN and the members of the LDAC during the public hearing process to see if they also would agree to these changes.
Right. And, you know,
Okay.
this is kind of, you know, we know with COVID and closures that the hospitality industry was hit especially hard. And they, you know, rely on these sales, and you know, again, we'll hear from them.
But
and see if-
we pumped another $6 million into that industry, so.
Oh, sure, but that money's
I'm sure
gonna
some Sunday morning liquor did not come into
Right,
factor.
but that money's not going to continue to pump into it, and there's some it was interesting, I was doing some county visits, and,
Okay.
and some of, you know, I'm just saying in general, that some of the places that are getting this, they are not paying some other expenses, they had extra, I could say this for public comment, but I was just going to say, they maybe had some rent relief, or they had longer unemployment benefits, and so some of the money that's been pumped into the economy is temporary, and it's going to start going away. So while these industries and businesses have gotten absolutely and needed to have this additional money pumped into their industry, it is temporary, and it is going to go away. So I just want to make sure that everybody is sustainable. Are you introducing? Are you putting your hand up?
Oh, yeah, I'm all for it.
Is Mr. Bridges, Liquor Board, or would you like to speak?
Or we want to wait till the public hearing?
Let's wait for public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, no problem.
It's not a public hearing.
Yeah,
yet.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
we'll
not-
wait, we'll
We're
wait
gonna
to
wait
the,
for
Yeah.
we'll wait
public
to the
hearing.
public hearing.
Okay.
Okay,
It's just
yeah.
introduction.
Yep, okay, all right.
Who wishes to introduce it?
Mm-hmm.
Put both hands up.
Drinking on Sunday.
We'll go offline on that comment you made to me earlier today.
Okay.
This will be
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
This will be known as Bill number 1527. The public hearing will be held on Tuesday, October 25th at 6:30 PM.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, Madam Secretary, the next on the agenda is the introduction of Amendment Bill 1524. You could do that, that'd be great.
The amendments proposed to the text of Bill 1524, which is a bill to amend Chapter 190 of the Talbot County Code, zoning, subdivision, and land development regarding solar energy systems. Yeah, I'll defer to Mr. Thomas.
I believe this is amendment proposed by Mr. Lesher.
Correct, yeah. So this is simply a further amendment to the one that I previously introduced that in this case includes a particular exclusion. I guess we can read the language of it into the record, substituting that earlier Amendment 1, a parcel of agricultural land upon which a large-scale SES engineered and designed to produce more than 2 megawatts of power is proposed to be sited, shall be evaluated by the MALF, et cetera. So it's that introductory language that simply restricts this scoring criteria to projects over 2 megawatts. I will say that while I would like to introduce this tonight for the record, that I've received further suggestions that may result in another alternate amendment to this that would be forthcoming, that would, rather than that introductory restriction, would take would say that this subsection shall not apply to any large-scale SES that was the subject of a planning and zoning staff pre-application meeting prior to June 1st, 2002, and that does not exceed 375 acres enclosed by fence and developed by photovoltaic panels. So a way of exempting certain projects that have already sort of been in the queue, yet still moving forward with this proposal that would use a scoring system that would preserve our most productive soils in the county for croplands.
So is this in lieu of Amendment 1?
This is a new. It'll be numbered Amendment 3. Tonight's would be it would be, of course, either Amendment 1 or Amendment 3, not both. They are. We wouldn't use both of those amendments, and
So
if
how
we
many
do this Amendment 4, it would that would again be a.
People are going to be confused. So who introduced Amendment number 1?
I did.
Just you.
Mm-hmm.
So, in theory, to keep things simple, it would, can you pull Amendment 1 just to keep them simple so that,
Why does he need to do that? I mean,
well, because he just added instructional language to Amendment number 1, so,
Amendment
No,
1 was introduced by Mr. Callahan, Mr.
Oh.
DeVillio,
He has
Mr.
to do
Lesher,
that.
and Ms. Price.
If
Okay.
you want to introduce this amendment, you can introduce the amendment.
okay, no, I was just, I mean, if it was just a further clarification of Amendment 1, and then, of course, I introduced amendment, or a couple of us introduced Amendment number 2, which you really couldn't have them both, so we'll have to decide which it's going to be.
That's exactly right, and I think in our when we bring this to a vote at the next meeting, we can consider these one by one and
Right.
look at the intention here. The intention here is to provide some protection for our best croplands in a manner that also will withstand a challenge from the or that will withstand review by the Public Service Commission. We're looking to have a scheme that will preserve our croplands, that will not cite solar installations on our best croplands. But if we're too restrictive, we know from experience in other jurisdictions that the Public Service Commission will simply preempt. And so if we the search here is for a solution that will withstand that scrutiny from the PSC.
And you weren't here, and I guess we can talk more about it at the next meeting when Amendment number 2 was kind of conceptualized here based on some of the public hearing, which I'm sure you were able to go back and listen to for the larger parcels, to give them a little bit more than the 10 acres, which would still preserve the vast majority of it, but give a little bit of wiggle room, which I also think might help with the PSC with Amendment 2. And I'm sure you've had a chance to go back and watch that public hearing, which is where that kind of came from.
I have indeed. Thank you.
And at the end of the day, my main concern with this is that, or goal, I guess, is that if we're going to take cropland out of production temporarily, 20, 30 years with the solar panels, that we're going to offset that by receiving funds to perpetually preserve farmland in the MALF program perpetually. That's a great win for a temporary cost in my mind. And I'm glad that the amendments preserve all of that.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so, so that's, show of hands.
And Mr. Callahan, I would like to offer another amendment, which would be amendment, I guess, to the amendment that was just offered, so they can go before the Planning Commission and Public Advisory Board for their review.
Okay.
And I believe based on the county manager's, county attorney's opinion that this is appropriate.
Mr.
Okay.
Pack, would there be time?
There is not time
What?
Okay.
for another amendment to go before the planning commission.
When is their next meeting?
October 5th.
But you can't advertise it.
Their meeting's October the 5th. It's already been advertised, but I do believe we could add it to a revised agenda and have them review it in time to provide a recommendation back to you all at your 18th or the 25th meeting. Should you need a recommendation?
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate your consideration for that. I would ask that you do so. So the amendment language would read as Mr. Lesher stated for the record, taking off where his amendment ends in the word contrary. This subsection B shall not be applied to any large-scale SES that was the subject of a planning and zoning staff pre-application meeting prior to June 1, 2022, and does not exceed 375 acres enclosed by fence and developed by photovoltaic panels. So that would be the amended language that I wish to go before the Planning Commission for their review.
Mr. Pack,
Yes.
just for clarification, Bill 1524 expires on October 13th, so the Planning Commission would need to make a recommendation
Wait, the 13th?
before October 11th, the council's next meeting, because otherwise this bill will expire.
Their meeting on October the 5th.
Fifth.
So you could do it before
Yeah,
the
they meet on the
11th.
5th. So we have time. That meets their requirement. Okay. Thank you.
Do we need, raise of hands for that?
For Mr. Pack's amendment?
Yeah.
I'll-
Yep.
Yes.
That will be known as Amendment Number 4.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, okay, let's move on to, Madam Secretary, to eligible for vote. Okay. Resolution 333.
Bill number, resolution number 333, a resolution to approve amended rules of procedure of the Talbot County Board of Appeals.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Any discussion or is there a motion?
I think this came from the Board of Appeals, right?
Yes.
This is,
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
this was there, okay.
Mhm.
I'll make the motion for,
And I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion seconded. I'm gonna wait till, I should wait, Ms. Price come back.
Be polite.
Yeah. What, for this?
I'm sorry.
I always get thrown off with a resolution.
I was reading, and I looked down.
We're getting ready to vote on 333.
Yes, if you're seeking comment on 333, Mr. Callahan, I will certainly support this. These rule changes came from the Board of Appeals at their request
Okay.
to council to kind of clean up some areas in their process. I know the county attorney has gone through them. I looked at it briefly as well.
Okay.
So I certainly support it.
Okay, okay. You up to speed, Ms. Price, before we vote? You good?
Yep.
Okay. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Okay. Madam Secretary, it looks like we're on 1523 next.
Bill number 1523, a bill to amend Chapter 190 of the Talbot County Code, zoning, subdivision, and land development, to add a definition of country club and to provide for the expansion and major modification of a nonconforming country club in the Resource Conservation RC District.
And I apologize, council. I've spent a lot of time working with Preston on the Parks and Rec project. I haven't had an opportunity to meet with Brud yet, and I'd like to push that off to a vote on October 11th, if that would be okay.
Okay.
No objection.
All right, Madam Secretary, we're going to push that off to the October 11th for approval. Okay. All right, next would be Bill 1525.
Bill number 1525, a bill to amend Chapter 190 of the Talbot County Code, zoning, subdivision, and land development regarding the expansion of structures utilized for nonconforming uses subject to certain conditions.
Okay, council? Any discussion?
No discussion for me.
No, I appreciate those who came out. You know, this was a unique property that opened my eyes to it when I said in the very beginning, I can't remember now, looking at square footage of what storage units are, and then seeing a small property, I like seeing somebody start small and then be able to expand into it, opposed to overgrow right out of the gate and fail, and then us be stuck with something that just doesn't make sense. So it still requires the Board of Appeals approval, so I'm willing to support this.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's based on one particular project. You know, you always have to consider these things. You know, we don't want to be doing like spot zoning or whatever, but since it does still have to go through the Board of Appeals, it just gives them, from what I understand, the ability to ask.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else?
I'm
Council?
good. I'm good.
Okay, Madam Secretary? Could you call the vote?
Sure. Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Nay.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, next on the list is Talbot County Free Library. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. How you doing?
Very good. How are you tonight?
Good, good. Just tell everybody who you are.
I'm Robert Filoni. I'm the Vice President of the Talbot County Free Library Board.
Okay, that's great.
I'm Dana Newman. I'm the Library Director for Talbot County Free Library. All right, so we're here today to request support from the County Council for two things. The first being to place a literary landmark at the Frederick Douglass Park on the Tuckahoe, and second, to have your support for a letter that will go to the literary landmark group for this literary landmark. So let me just go briefly through our presentation. I do want to say before I start that we do have a few members from the Frederick Douglass Honor Society here, and they're back here. So thank you very much for your support as well. And we also, this is coming on the heels of a very, very successful Frederick Douglass Day, which was Saturday. There were several thousand people in attendance for that over the course of the day. It was very well attended, and people were very happy with the event. So I think that just really shows you the significance of Frederick Douglass and his contributions, his legacy to the county. So I'll go ahead and go through the presentation. All right, so here you can see, this is a view of the Tuckahoe. And as everybody knows, I think Frederick Douglass was born on the Tuckahoe near Hillsborough, about 12 miles from Easton. And that's very significant because he is really, when we look at literary figures in Maryland, I think he would probably come up on top as the most significant literary figure that Maryland has. Not only is his contribution to a number of narratives, but we have oral history from him, as well as just his beautiful words and the impact that they have on our youth, the inspiration that they have for individuals. I don't think enough can be said about that. So the Literary Landmark Association was founded in 1986 to encourage the dedication of historic literary sites. And I think the park on the Tuckahoe definitely is one of those locations. It definitely is his birthplace, and as you'll see later in my presentation, there's a number of other birthplaces throughout the United States that are commemorated in this way. So there are literary landmarks throughout the United States, 120 of those. This would be only the second one in Maryland. Recently, the Poe House in Baltimore was designated as literary landmark. So Talbot County, if we get this up and running, would have the second one in the state of Maryland. So a current initiative for the Literary Landmark program through United for Libraries is to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion in the program. So that is another reason to put, I really think that they're gonna not have any concerns with putting Frederick Douglass forward as a literary landmark candidate. You can see that there's a number of birthplaces. Ernest Hemingway, for example, is a literary landmark. Walt Whitman has a birthplace as well as a literary landmark. And again, there are literary landmarks throughout the United States in 37 states. But I think it's significant that a lot of states have more than 5, some have 10. Maryland only has 1, and I think this would really be a great contribution to Talbot County to have the second one in the state. So Edgar Allan Poe, again, the Poe House was designated in 2020 as the first literary landmark. It got a lot of attention when that happened, even with COVID. And I do believe this would give the park on the Tuckahoe a lot of attention. It would get tourism there are people who actually go around and visit these literary landmarks. And sometimes there are things like the Poe House connected with them. I'm hoping that we'll have a lot more at the park in time to contribute to that. So I believe that this would increase the visibility of Frederick Douglass as a literary hero, basically a writer and orator in Maryland. It also increases the diversity of writers that are represented through the program. I think more than anything else, it's going to increase the visibility of the park and possibly help with attention for fundraising opportunities for the park as well. There's an application process. I'm not going to go into this to save some time, but there is a minimum of 12 weeks in advance of the program that they do want you to apply. And we're looking at almost a whole year that we're looking for this process to happen. Potential partners, the Talbot County Parks and Rec, Preston has indicated that he is supportive of this project. Cassandra has also, with Talbot County Economic Development and Tourism, has also indicated her support, and she has said that she believes this will be very good for tourism, as well as the Citizens for Maryland Libraries, some of the Talbot County Free Library groups, and the Frederick Douglass Honor Society, among others, as potential partners. Locations in the park, if you're familiar with where the park is, that we may place this landmark is possibly at the beginning of the park, near the beginning of the walkway down to the creek, But I think the best location would be down toward the view of the Tuckahoe. I think that would be more significant, and so closer to these three signs that are near the Tuckahoe Creek. And so there is an event that needs to be connected with the literary landmark process. And again, Cassandra has indicated that she would help to support this event. We would need to identify a speaker to come in and talk to people about the significance of Frederick Douglass, as well as plan the public event. I'm hoping that we could hold this event in connection with leading up to Frederick Douglass Day in September of 2023. So there is a long process to go through in order to apply and then get the funding that's required for a literary landmark. These are just some other celebrations that you can see that they've had throughout the United States in regards to literary landmarks. It is a very significant contribution to a community to have one of these, as well as it really does lift up the person who is being honored, and I really believe Frederick Douglass does. He does need to be lifted up in this way, and I think he, you know, lifts up people daily with his words, and I think it just would be wonderful if we could do the same thing for him. And I think you wanted to say a few things.
Yeah, so I think everyone's very well aware that Frederick Douglass is exceptionally important, not just specifically for this region, but nationally and internationally. This is a wonderful way to recognize his achievements. I can tell you specifically as a professor, I've brought my graduate students here from Goucher College in Cultural Sustainability to learn specifically about Frederick Douglass, and one of the most transformational experiences I've had was having Harriet Lowry read from Frederick Douglass's narrative in St. Stephen's Church at Unionville, and then going to Y House and meeting with the family there as well. So this is a tremendous opportunity that we have here to really recognize a native son who has made a tremendous impact, as I said, regionally, locally, internationally, and really finding a way to create the visibility for tourists, locals, and the next generation. His commitment to education, his skills as an orator, author, and a publisher are without second, and the fact that we only have one literary landmark in Maryland really positions us well to have a second.
So I would ask for your support, both again to place a literary landmark at the park on the Tuckahoe. I do believe that it would be very good for tourism, but also to bring attention to the park. But the significance of Frederick Douglass, I think you said it very well. We can't say enough about him. His words really do have an impact on generations. And all of the words that I heard on Saturday, a number of them from young adults, it's just inspiring to hear what the Frederick Douglass means to individuals still. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, I don't want to do anything to bind the next council. I've been trying to be extremely respectful of that, but this is a letter I definitely want my name on.
Right. Mr. Lesher?
Yeah, I missed the last council meeting, having been in Halifax, where I actually stumbled across a literary landmark up at the Citadel overlooking Halifax. I found it very engaging, a really interesting way to connect landscape with literature. This seems entirely appropriate, and I'll certainly vote for this letter of support. But I'd also encourage our library to think about other ways that Talbot County has inspired writers, other writers in this place, and it is certainly appropriate that Frederick Douglass be the first to be honored in this way, but perhaps there are others that might be similarly honored and might similarly inspire visitors in this place and connect them with literature.
It's a great idea. We'll definitely take that under advisement.
Okay. Ms. Price?
No, I think it's a wonderful idea, for sure. Mr. Callahan, didn't you tell us, you were on a trip a couple of years ago overseas in Europe or whatever,
in Ireland.
and you came across Frederick Douglass over
Yep. It was
he's
unbelievable.
He's very well known around, not just around the county, and the state, and the country, but Ireland.
We were in a pub,
So-
and his big sign was right up there.
Yeah,
So
very
it's
cool,
phenomenal.
but definitely
Yep.
supportive. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see you over there.
Oh,
Are you
sorry.
okay over there?
Yeah.
Okay. You're daydreaming. That's all right. That's all right.
Taking a mental nap.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just surprised that there's only one. I remember as a kid doing the tour of the Poe House. We did the Poe House. We did Francis Scott Key, Fort McHenry, I should say, where Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner. You would think that that would probably be a literary landmark, but it's not. For full disclosure, now I am on the Frederick Douglass Honor Society as a member, and I'm also on the board of the Frederick Douglass Parks Committee. I don't think that being a part of those two groups would in any way keep me from voting for this. I say that aloud just for full disclosure, being on both of those committees, because I think as we all know, Frederick Douglass, his mark, his position here in Talbot County and the world needs to be recognized. The fact that only Talbot County can say that we have a Frederick Douglass Park on the Tuckahoe. New York can't make that claim. Virginia can't make that claim. D.C. can't make that claim. Nor can Ireland. So, to have this position there at the Tuckahoe, where he said very clearly where he was born, I think it's important. So, for that disclosure, I'll make that, Mr. Thomas. Again, I don't think that in any way would keep me from casting a vote unless you tell me otherwise.
I wouldn't believe so, no.
I would, okay. Thank you very much. And we have Mr. Bean back there with her Talbot County Free Library sign. Good to see you as well.
Okay,
So,
council?
I'll move for the
Okay.
letter of support.
Okay.
second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second for lower support. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Okay, good job.
Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
really appreciate it, and
Yep.
I know Frederick Douglass would as well.
Yep. Thank you, Cassandra.
Consider John Barth's Tidewater Tales.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys. Okay. Let's see here now. Okay, Miss Martha, you're up next. Okay, we're going to go over the FY23 county property taxes. Be great.
Every year, Talbot County grants real property tax credits to various nonprofit organizations that own property in the county. And for FY 2023, the county's received requests for property tax credits from the following organizations. And I'll just be real quick. Chesapeake Audubon Society, 6 parcels, same number as last year. Chesapeake Wildlife Heritage, 9 parcels, same as last year. Commissioners of St. Michael's, 3 parcels, same as last year. Habitat for Humanity, 11 properties for future home sites. 9 are in Easton, 3 are in St. Michael's, and there is a drop in that number of parcels from last year. Neighborhood Service Center, South Street property for housing for 3 families, and that is the same as last year. Spring Hill Cemetery Association, it said North Aurora Street. It's 1 parcel, and that is new for this year. Talbot County, Talbot Agricultural Center on Heiners Lane, same as last year. Talbot County, there were 12 parcels total. Tuckahoe Steam and Gas Association, same as last year. Waterfowl Festival, 1 parcel for future use, same as last year. These requests for credits on county real property taxes are on 47 parcels, and that totals $58,367.55. Last year, there were 50 parcels, and the credit request was $55,569.69. So it's an increase in this request for credits of $2,797.86, and I request the council approve county rural property tax credits on these properties.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Thank you.
Assistant County Manager report.
Okay. All right.
Good?
Jess?
All
Yep.
right. The first is a request from the Roads Department to utilize fiscal year '23 budgeted funds to purchase a John Deere 5105M utility tractor with Alamo Machete 3-boom and Alamo Battle Axe mower. The Roads Department is seeking to purchase this equipment in the amount of $174,722.81 from Atlantic Tractor, utilizing the state of Maryland's contract, and there are sufficient budget funds for this purchase.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Great, and then I'd like to call up Mr. Risher, our airport manager, for 3 items. This all has to do with the replacement of the automated weather observing system, the AWAS at the Easton Airport. Micah, do you want me to just go through them individually, or?
You can, and if there's any questions, I'll answer them.
Sounds
Okay.
good. So the first is a request for the airport to apply for and accept Maryland Aviation Administration special grant funding for this project. The grant application totals $465,444, which includes both the construction and the construction phase services. If awarded, the MAA would contribute $321,525 towards the AWAS replacement project, and the airport would contribute the remainder of $143,919.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we've got a motion second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
The next is for the airport to accept AECom, who is the consultant for the airport, their price proposal for the AWAS replacement project. The AECom's price proposal is in the amount of $36,744, and it includes the professional engineering and construction phase services for the AWAS project.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
The next is for the airport to award bid 22-13, automated weather observing system replacement at the Easton Newman Field Airport, Talbot County, Maryland. The airport put this bid out. We received one sole bid from Glen Elg. I'm not sure if I'm saying that
Yeah,
right.
Glen L Construction.
Glen Elg Construction in the amount of $428,700. This bid has been thoroughly reviewed and deemed to be a responsive bid.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion second to approve. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
And lastly, we're requesting the award of bid 2214, request for farmland rental proposals at Easton Airport. As you read in your agenda packet, the airport is requesting the award of this bid to the highest bidder, Edward Rowe, in the sum of $14,525 per crop season for each year of 2023, 2024, and 2025. A total of 2 bids were received.
I do have one question on that.
Yes, sir.
So I think the Gannons have been farming that for a while, right?
They've actually had it the last 3 years.
Yes,
And
sir.
it was more farms 3 years before that. So it kind of goes off and on.
Okay, okay. Did both of those 2 farmers put a bid in?
Gannon's was the other one who put a bid in this year.
Okay, okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, got a motion second.
Second.
Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio,
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
Mr. Risher hardly got to do any talking, so I'd like to give him just the opportunity to give a plug about Airport Day that's coming up. It's
Nice.
a great
I appreciate that. Yes, thanks, Jessica. Yes, so Airport Day next Saturday, the October the 8th. It's going to be a big turnout. We have headliners this year. We're bringing 2 A-10s out of Martin State, which is always a fan favorite. If you remember the C-47 Placid Lassie that was there last year, she's a D-Day veteran, actually has, flew missions and troops, paratroop out of her at D-Day. We have another DC-3 coming this year. and the Army Guards are bringing a Chinook, and it's going to do a paratrooper thing. So some neat new elements, and that's in addition to the 30-some warbirds that are going to come and fly in formation. So it's going to be an excellent day. Of course, you guys are all invited. I'll be sending out an email. So if you want to get there for the opening ceremonies, it's going to be a little earlier this year, about 9:45. Of course, we always remind people that this is such a successful event that the traffic is pretty terrible that morning. So come early. We have 10 county employees that have volunteered to come out and help us out, and they'll be helping us park cars and keep things organized. So it's going to be a great day at the airport.
Are you bringing in more food vendors this year?
I think we have, it's either 5 or 7. Of course, Jeff Langford, with him being on board, he's done a really good job beating the bushes, and we got, I think, 5 to 7 food trucks. So a lot of variety of food. Of course, we got the Sugar Buns Cafe out there. So it's gonna be a lot of options out there this year. It's gonna be really neat.
Okay. That's great.
I appreciate it. I had a buddy reach out to you who's a pilot to see how he could volunteer, participate, and you hooked him up with the ACE program.
Yes.
The tent. So thank you very much.
And that's another one. Thank you, Mr. DeVillio. Our ACE program, the Aviation Career Education, we're going to have 4 different airplanes out there. Flight schools, Civil Air Patrol. We're going to have some people out there, pilots, engaging students and people who want to talk aviation. And something we're going to do a little differently this year is we're putting some airport equipment out there and kind of telling our story about being an enterprise fund of Talbot County government and financially self-sustaining and things of that nature. Because most people don't fully understand how we operate. So we're going to put some informational boards out there and kind of tell the story of the airport, operations as well. So it's going to be a pretty fun year for us.
Awesome.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah,
Good
thanks,
job.
Council.
Yep. Okay. Did you want to do the announcement?
Yes, and
Yeah.
just I have one final announcement this evening that the council will be meeting next Tuesday, October 4th at 3 p.m. for the annual Consolidated Transportation Plan meeting. This is an opportunity for representatives from Maryland Department of Transportation to come and talk about some of the projects they're doing statewide as well as regionally and in our county, and for the county and municipal governments to interact with our representatives.
Okay.
That's being held at 3 o'clock at the community center on the 4th.
Okay, great.
Bring a jackhammer.
Yep. Okay. Okay. All
And
right.
that's all. Thank
Okay, I appreciate that. Good job. Next would be the public comments. Do we have anything you might want to check out there?
No, I did.
Everybody go on.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak?
Okay. You can come up and say something if you like. Okay, you good? All right. All right. Lastly, the council comments. Mr. DeVillio.
No comment tonight.
No
Thank you.
comment. Mr. Lesher.
Nothing from me.
Okay. Ms. Price.
Not this evening.
No. There he is over there. You're good? Okay. All right. Appreciate everything. Everybody's hard work tonight. I know it's a little bit long, but you guys did a great job tonight, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Wait, we got to do it. Yeah, sorry.
County Council will be meeting Tuesday, October 4th, convening an open session at 1:30 p.m. and then adjourning into closed session to discuss real estate, legal, and personnel matters as listed on the statement for closing that meeting at 3 o'clock p.m. The council will be meeting with representatives from the Maryland Department of Transportation for the annual Consolidated Transportation Plan meeting. That meeting will be held in the Wyoke Room located at the Talbot County Community Center, 10028 Ocean Gateway in Easton. The council's next meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 11th, beginning at 6 o'clock p.m. The council will be convening an open session at 4:30 p.m. and then adjourning into closed session to discuss real estate, legal, and personnel matters as listed on the statement for closing that meeting. Therefore, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting and reconvene as noted?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Peck?
All right, thank you.